Hello everyone and welcome to another session of AP Human Geography Review with Mr. Elrod. Today we're going to be dealing with two concepts that are very closely related. In fact, one impacts the other. I say that one is the cause and one is the effect of the other. And that is friction of distance and distance decay. Now, in order for us to understand a lot of the concepts in this class, especially in terms of diffusion, especially in terms of interaction, and how that's impacted by development and technology, it's really important to understand this concept of friction of distance and distance decay. And of course, both of these concepts are both directly related to the idea of time-space compression. And sometimes students tell me they have difficulty understanding the two, and so I figured I would make this brief video to help go over these two concepts. First let's look at both of them together. When we look at these two concepts, it's really important to understand that the impact that both of these concepts are going to have on interaction, and also on, if you want to think about it in terms of diffusion. When we talk about the impact of interaction, it's going to impact the way that people interact with each other, so from person to person, as we interact not just with people in our own space, but people outside of maybe our own personal space. Also, it's going to impact the amount of space that people are able to interact with, so from person to space. Meaning the distance that I can travel, my activity space, as you might talk about in the migration section of the course, and then also from place to place, as different places, whether it's states or cities, interact with each other. And of course, when we talk about diffusion and you talk about important cultural elements moving from some of our more important cities, maybe New York or London, to second-tier cities, maybe a place like Los Angeles or Atlanta or Charlotte. Of course, Atlanta and Charlotte much further down than Los Angeles. Then the ideas of friction of distance and distance decay are going to be really important in the interaction of those two between those cities. Sorry. And of course, if it impacts interaction, then it is definitely going to impact diffusion. When we talk about diffusion, the spread of something over space, of course, diffusion is caused by interaction, depending on the different types of interaction that we have. Now, we also need to know that this interaction, or the elements of friction of distance and distance decay, are going to be affected by a couple things. One of those, which is wealth. And as I talk about transportation technology and communication technology, we need to understand that both of those are also impacted by wealth. Now, this could be wealth of the society as a whole, or it could be about individual wealth. You might even put in there development. Because the wealthier people are, the less that distance is going to play a role, or not, well, the less that distance is going to impact one's ability to interact with larger amounts of space. And of course, along with that, we have different types of transportation technology as well as infrastructure. Whether we're talking about a car or a bicycle or an airplane, of course, I'm going to be able to get around to different places depending on the type of transportation technology I have. And of course, my technology is really no good if I don't have the infrastructure in order to support that transportation technology. It's no good if I have an airplane, but I have no place to land that airplane. If I have a car, but no road that I can drive that car on. And so, along with the transportation technology, you need the transportation infrastructure. And that goes directly back to wealth. Typically, wealthier people are going to have greater mobility in terms of individual transportation technology. And then also communication technology, our ability to communicate across space. And of course, within the last 50 years or so, this has been absolutely revolutionized by things like cell phones or computers and the internet and those types of things. So our ability to communicate across space. So all of these things are going to, both friction of distance and distance decay, are going to change based upon those different levels, and I'll talk more about that in just a minute. So if we talk about friction of distance, the reason I talk about friction of distance first is because friction of distance really is the cause. Really what we're talking about when we discuss friction of distance is the impact of distance on interactions. So what that means is that the further I get away, or the further the distance is, the greater the friction is going to be on the interaction between either the person to person, person to space, or place to place. And so that next point there, the distance creates a barrier to interaction. The greater the distance, the greater the barrier is going to be. Obviously it may not be a barrier as in a geographic barrier like a mountain or a river, but distance creates something that is going to hinder us from moving to a particular place or interacting with a particular place. And so, of course, when we look at the different types of technology or from place to place, space to space, perceived distance is going to be greater. Depending on what my level of technology is, depending on my level of wealth is, the perception of that distance is going to be much greater the lower my levels of wealth or technology are. And then this last point, it's going to vary from place to place and from time to time. All across this world, people have varying levels of wealth. States have varying levels of wealth, and so this idea of friction of distance is not going to be the same for everybody. So obviously, the greater the connection, whether we talk about communication connection, technology connection, or transportation technology connection, less the impact of distance is going to have. Now, even in the United States, there are places that are cut off, maybe you might say, from the grid, or less connected, and so the friction of distance is going to be greater. If you look at the city of Atlanta, any city that is connected to the city of Atlanta by way of airplane is going to have a high connectivity, so the friction of distance is going to be less. But any city that Atlanta is not connected to, even in the United States, then that means that the friction of distance is going to be greater. Even when we're talking about short distance travel, I live right near a lake, and so the lake creates kind of this barrier, and so some places are easier to get to than others because of the direct route that roads might take in relationship to the lake. And this last point, the less connection there is, again, whether communication technology or transportation technology, you're going to have a greater impact of distance on the interaction between the places. So it doesn't really matter what time period you're in, doesn't matter what place you're in across the world. Depending on what the connection is, that is going to be the impact of friction of distance, or the impact that distance is going to play on the interaction between those places. And so the effect of that is going to be distance decay. So distance decay is going to result from friction of distance. So what we mean by that is that over space, the further you get away from something, the less the interaction between spaces are going to be. Between people are going to be. Between people in a place is going to be. So the further I go, the less the interaction. So it's that concept that you learn about in science. This idea that friction plays. It's going to the greater the friction, the harder it is going to be to move something. So the further away something is, the greater the friction there is, the less the interaction there is. So just like friction of distance, distance decay also varies from place to place and from time to time. And it's the exact same correlation. The greater the connection, the greater the interaction, and then also the greater the influence, which is what is so important about distance decay. Distance decay is relating directly to influence, especially when you're talking about places and the influence that they have on the surrounding area. So when you're talking about core and periphery, typically in your political section, but maybe even your economic section, about core and periphery, connection is going to be key. So the greater the connection that there is going to be, the greater the interaction, the greater the influence. And in the converse is exactly true also. The less the connection that there is, the less their interaction is going to be, the less the influence that either that person or that place is going to have. And so there's a direct relationship there between distance decay and friction of distance. And in fact, let me draw a I don't have any more slides. I'm going to have to create a new slide. I'm going to draw a very simple graph here to kind of illustrate this point. If you'll permit me just a second or so. So we have, just a very simple graph here. Oops, that's not good. I don't have an eraser. That's interesting. So you know what? We're going to try that again. All right. So we're going to create just a very simple graph. The horizontal axis, the vertical axis is going to the vertical axis here is going to indicate number of reactions. The horizontal axis is going to indicate to us the distance. Okay, so this is D for distance. This is I for interactions. There's a direct relationship. The closer I am to something, the greater the interaction is going to be. the further away I am from something, the less the interaction is going to be. And so we see this relationship over space. And now you can get more complicated with it, especially if you deal with different types of economic activity, but this is just a real simple illustration. Again, the further I get away from something, let's say, whatever this point is here, the less the interaction is going to be between a space. So this is the cause of distance. So this right here is the friction of distance. The effect, the fewer the interactions, that is the distance decay. Alright, so hopefully that helps to illustrate this point just a little bit better. Hopefully that helps to clarify some things. If you still have some questions about it, feel free to leave me some comments in the comment section below. And as always, if you have any additional topics you'd like for me to cover, let me know. I look forward to seeing you next time.